Okay, we'll start now. This will only probably last about 30 minutes. Um, we'll have two more sessions during the summer. Every time we cover something either really new or something difficult, I will schedule a live session. And what I've found is that there's no really good time that suits every student in a class. Some students work different schedules, some have different commitments with family and other things. So I just honestly choose a time that's convenient for me. And having tried to, adapt to student schedules in the past, and it just was not successful. But what I do is record these sessions and then send out the link to the recording so that you can watch them later. However, the benefit of actually being and attending a live session is that you can ask questions, you can slow me down if you need to. It's more of an interactive give and take discussion type format than just sort of watching something somebody recorded. So having said that, please do not hesitate to, if you've got a microphone, hopefully it's muted right now. It's right there in the center of the screen, that little microphone. But if you want to, if you do have a microphone on your computer, you can unmute yourself and ask questions at any time. That's fine. Please don't worry about interrupting me. You can also raise your hand. You'll notice there in the center of the screen at the bottom as well, there's that little raised hand figure. So that would just indicate you're getting my attention. And you can on the right-hand side of the screen, there should be a chat bubble. It's that little round bubble that looks like a dialog box. And if you select that, it will open up a chat feature where you can just type questions and I can then answer. And they appear on my screen and I can answer them in real time. So please don't hesitate to do that. I wanted to have a live session at the very beginning of the semester because now we're getting into the work, and we're going to go quite quickly. As you know, this is only a 10-week session, and we're covering much of the same material that you would cover in a 15-week session if you were to take the course during the spring or the summer. If you watched the course orientation video, which I hope you did, and I hope it was helpful to you, that's one of the things I emphasized is when you sign on for a summer class, you're signing on for the same curriculum as that taught at other times. It's just compressed because it's a shorter semester. So, I hope that you're able to adapt well enough. I am trying to, for those of you who like to work ahead, try to open a week's work ahead of time so that you can continue on if you have the time. I encourage you to do so. Be sure and meet deadlines, of course. And whenever you have questions, please don't hesitate to call or to email me. All right, so if we were in a face-to-face class, what I would do is distribute the guidelines, and you had a copy of those. It's the first document, I believe, in the week 3 folder. I would distribute these guidelines and we would go over them as a class. Now, I don't want to read for you what you can obviously read for yourself, but I want to provide some commentary so that maybe you can make things a little bit more clear and also answer any questions that you may have. First of all, this is your first major assignment, okay? And pretty much every writing assignment after this, the larger assignments, will be weighted more heavily than, say, the blog post that I'm in the process of grading. And I should have yours completed tomorrow. So it's a 100-point assignment. It's what I would consider a formal writing assignment, but because it requires more of you, there's more development. It's still pretty brief, which we'll talk about in a second, and we'll talk about why word counts. But this will be a description essay. So you started working on description in week 2's folder. That's where you had the sample paper, the reading assignment about description, and the sample paper, sample essay written by a professional about Miss Bessie, a teacher whom he had who was so influential. So that was an example of a description of a person, okay? So your first writing assignment should be a description essay that focuses either on a person, a place, an event, or a thing. And there sometimes is some overlap, but usually you sort of focus in on one of those 4 nouns, okay? And it's fine because it's fine for me, to me, if you write this personally. This will be about the last assignment, though, in which you can use first person I and write from your own perspective and have the paper be more subjective than objective, okay? But it's fine with me that you actually take this from You're not required to, but it's fine with me if you write from first person, I this, and your own personal experiences for this particular assignment, okay? Now notice the paper does need to have a main point, so be sure and choose a subject that you can make some point about it, and that's what we call a thesis. It's the main idea, not your subject. Your subject is, let's say, a particular person, your first girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever. But the thesis is the point that you want to make about that subject, okay? So make sure that you choose something, again, that lends itself to this kind of focus. Now, for every formal paper that you write, except for the last research paper, which will have a little bit more time, we take 2 weeks. And the reason that we take 2 weeks per assignment is because it's giving you the opportunity to perhaps do a little free writing, then draft the paper, and then I submit the draft to me, and that's what to do this coming Monday is a draft, okay? It's not supposed to be perfect, but it's your first effort at shaping your information and getting it down on paper so that I can then give you some feedback. Now, you'll receive 10 points for this draft. And that's just kind of a completion grade and acknowledgement that you did the work. And then I will give you some feedback, and I'm going to show you in a minute how to submit the paper in that particular Dropbox if you've never used the Turnitin system before, and then how to retrieve your feedback, which will be available by next Thursday, a week from today at 4 o'clock. Now, I'll probably have the feedback available sooner than that, and I will send out an email to the entire class as soon as the feedback is completed, so that, that may give you a little bit more time to work on revision. And then what you'll do is take that information and improve your paper, hopefully using the guidelines that I give you and some suggestions, and improve your paper and then submit the final paper to the Turnitin Dropbox, which will be in the week 4 folder. Oh, and that Dropbox is already, that folder is already open. But of course, do not submit a final paper yet. You do want to get your feedback before you do that. Okay, so some specific requirements and a little bit of explanation about those requirements. Again, we've already talked about, choose something that you're familiar enough about that you write as an insider. I've got to emphasize this because occasionally students slip up. You're not supposed to do research on this assignment. You're not supposed to have to look anything up. So if you don't know enough about your choice of subject to write about it without having to find out more information, then change subjects, okay? So again, you need to be an insider, which means that you know a lot about this person, this place, this thing, or this event, okay? You do need a main idea. Usually the thesis is, if you look at the Shaping an Essay PowerPoint that I included in this week 3 folder, the introduction, usually the thesis is the last sentence in an introduction. The introduction kind of usually starts in some way that sort of pulls readers in. We call that the hook or whatever, and then it leads down to the main point that the entire paper is going to make, okay? Now, it's crucial that you have good description and concrete detail, and that's one of the things you were supposed to work on this week and last week. Description is, adds life to anything that you write. And then finally, well, not finally, but I've got more to say here. The paper should be between 600 and 750 words. Now, I hate giving word counts because I realize that a lot of students feel like they have to write to fit the word count rather than focus on having something worth saying in the paper. But the reason I do give a word count, it's necessary because part of the goal of this course, this is kind of a skills course, English 1101. It's a foundation course to help you write in any of your other classes and write to fit whatever assignment another instructor or professor would give you. And so one of the ways that I help you adapt to different courses is by sort of helping you realize you've got to, whatever you're given, you have to use those guidelines to essentially write to fit the guidelines. So in this case, our target, if you think in terms of having if you've ever thrown darts or shot arrows or whatever, if you think in terms of target shooting, right, you know, you have, and sorry about my drawing, but 600 to 750 words is the bullseye, all right? That's what you're aiming for. And what that range shows you is how much space, how focused the paper needs to be, how much development it requires. Because if you write more than that, then you're not controlling your information. Okay. If you write less than that, it either means you don't have a good subject or you need to work a little bit more on pre-writing. And those pre-writing techniques that you did in week 2, having to do with before the blog, that section that you read, often it's my more left brain writers who struggle to come up with enough to say. Often left brain writers feel like, why do I have to take 5 paragraphs to write something I could kind of basically tell you in 3 sentences? But the reality is that an audience, somebody who's reading your work, needs more information. They need for you to provide, not just say it, but then show by providing more detail, example, reasons, etc. Okay. Now, you can actually write a little bit longer or a little bit shorter than this. As a matter of fact, let's just say if it's 550 words, all right, let's fudge up to 900. That's still going to be okay with no penalty. Okay. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, Microsoft Word does give you a word count. And, you know, in the bottom left-hand corner, it keeps track of however many words you're typing. So you'll know the word count. Also, when you upload your paper to turn it in, it too, if you give it a little time, will give you a word count, the number of words in the paper, if you're unsure of how to figure that out, because you definitely don't want to manual. We used to have to, back in the day, and this will date me and tell you how old I am, but we used to have to manually count. You know, if I took a course that actually had a word count, I had to count by hand. Now, if it's shorter than 550 words or longer than 900, you have failed to meet this criteria. Okay, so let's just say the next level here would be 550 to 900. You're pretty much, you know, longer or shorter than that, and you're kind of getting off the target, and you're missing the mark. Okay. Please, it needs to be typed as a Microsoft Word document. I cannot open, for example, a .pages, .pages, which I believe is the word processing designation for Apple products. If you've got an Apple Mac that you're using, a laptop, I do not have that capability. The only file extensions that I can use are these. .docs, .rtf, which stands for rich text file, I believe, and .pdf. So as long as your document is saved as one of these, when you hit save as, whatever word processing program you're using, as long as you select one of these, then the Turnitin system will accept it and I can open it. The Turnitin won't even accept, you know, for example, if it's a Google Doc, that will not work. Okay. I've realized a lot of high schools use Google Docs now, but for the Turnitin system and for my capability as to what I can open and read, it has to be one of these file extensions. Okay, of course, you're going to submit the draft. You need a title that's relevant. It shouldn't be description essay. You need the appropriate header, which we're going to talk about in a second. And then the final version should be submitted to, in week 4, there's a revised essay Dropbox, Turnitin Dropbox for the revised essay. Our schedule, for every formal assignment that you have from me, and I think there'll be 3 essays and 1 research paper, and a couple of other support documents that go with the research paper. I'll always give you some guidelines. I'll always give you a schedule. So in a handout form that will be the same format. The draft is due Monday. Please be aware I do not take late drafts. Unless you have a verifiable emergency or you email me before Monday and say I need more time, and please be aware, I'm always happy to give students extensions if they need them, but I have to know before the due date. That's the one thing. You can't email me on Monday, because to me it just looks like you've put it off and you haven't done the work, and you waited till the last minute and now you've got too much to do. And unfortunately, since things have been open for 2 weeks, to me, that's not a good enough reason to give you an extension. However, should you encounter some type of emergency, or if your workload, or for whatever reason, it's just going to be difficult for you to get it in that Monday, let me know before Monday, and I'll work with you on that, okay? By Thursday of that week, I'll have your feedback available, and I'm going to show you how to retrieve that in a minute. And then the final paper is due to the revised essay Dropbox in the week 4 folder. I'm going to pause there. Do you have any questions? If so, type them or unmute yourself if you have a microphone and ask me. If not, we'll move on. All right, for all formal writing assignments this semester, please use this format. This is what your page should look like. Your name in the upper left-hand corner. Underneath that, English. Okay, no questions so far. Thank you for letting me know, Tabitha. Your name in the upper left-hand corner. Underneath that, English 1101. Online is fine if you want to include that. My name, and then the date that it's due. Then you have a title that's centered underneath that. Okay, so this is exactly what your page should look like. Notice that with the title, you do not need to underline it. You don't need quotation marks. It doesn't need to be bold. It doesn't need to be larger. It's just the same size font. Okay, and notice too that this is this format is a regular. I think this is Times New Roman or Arial. Those are two rather traditional, easy to read fonts. Notice that it should not be the print should not be italicized. That's hard on the eyes. It shouldn't be in bold. You don't need any color because, of course, you're trying to write an academic college level paper. So this is really how your page should look. Notice that there is a double space between the lines, and the first line of each paragraph is indented a full tab. Okay, so you don't need extra space between your paragraphs. You just need to indent the full tab, and that shows where each paragraph begins. It's easier to read, more legible. The page looks neater with the double space. Now, yes, I am being picky about this, but once again, what I'm trying to emphasize is that for you to learn to write to fit any writing assignment. So in another course, another instructor may have you do something quite different. Just learn to follow the guidelines. Whatever's expected of you, that's what you do, okay, to be successful. Page 2, the only difference here is to have a page number in the upper left-hand corner and then the page number. So usually it's the last name of your last name and the page number. And then after that, you've got your there's 1-inch margins all around. And yeah, so in other words, this is what the page should look like. And we're going to use the same format throughout the semester. You never need a title page. Let's just clear this up right away, because after a certain point, after, I may give 2 papers, but after that I start counting off, deducting points if the papers do not follow this format. Okay, any questions about this? It's pretty basic. This is called an MLA page format, and it's used, pretty consistently in most courses. All right, so now let's go to, if there are no questions, let's go to, I want to show you, so take me a second, give me a second to set this up for you. I want to show you how to turn in a paper and turn it in, and how to retrieve the feedback and what the feedback will mean. So if you'll just give me a second, because the computer lag time takes a minute. Okay, it should show up. Hopefully, there it is. Okay, now this is from last semester. This is and so my screen's going to look a little bit different from yours. As a matter of fact, this was a spring semester English 1101 course. So here's the Turnitin Dropbox. To upload a paper, select View Assignment. Okay. When you select, is it black on your end? It's showing up on mine. Is it still black? Can you see anything, Tabitha?
No, I can't. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I can't see anything.
Okay,
I
because
don't
it's
know if it's
showing.
just mine.
Okay, let me try something different then, because it says that it's sharing the application. So let me try again. Let me try a different approach to this. Well, that's not it. Let me try that one more time. Nope. Nope. Give me just a second. Hopefully I can work this out. I'm going to pause there and see if you see anything. It's not on my screen yet, but it should show up. It takes a minute. Well, now it's not doing it on mine either. Can you see anything? Can you see it now? It just popped up on mine.
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay, okay. I'm almost afraid to do anything, afraid I'll lose it. This is what my screen looks like. Obviously, yours will not, okay? Because you will not have all the other students in the course, you know, on that particular page. So, but what you will have is your name will automatically be displayed there, and then what you want to do is select Submit here in the upper left-hand corner to upload your paper. So I'm going to select Submit, and it's not going to let me do anything, obviously, because it's past due date, but your name will automatically be filled in. Now you have two options here. Let me make sure that, yeah, you should be on the same screen. Does your screen say Turnitin Dropbox for drafted description essay at the top, and does it have like submit? Hopefully. You should have two options here. One is a file upload, which is the one that you want. The other option is text submission. If you select text submission, you have to type the entire paper here where it says text to submit. And unfortunately, that's not a good option to actually type your paper directly in to Turnitin, because it strips off the formatting. So you won't end up with a paper that's indented where it needs to be and so forth. Okay. Okay, great. All right. So what you want to do is you want to select text submission, and then you have to, where there are these little stars right here. Now I'm not text submission, file upload. Where these little stars are, you are required to put something here. Okay, so you have to give it a title. So we'll just say whatever you want it to be, draft. And then where file to submit, this is where you select choose file. You actually go into this to your onto your computer or laptop, you find the where you drafted your paper and you select it, and then you select submit paper here in the right hand corner. Now this is pretty simple. There's nothing very complicated about this. But if for some reason, once you've successfully submitted, it's not going to, because it's past, this course is closed now, it's not going to let me do it. But if you successfully submit your paper, there will be a banner here across the top that's either green or red. Right here, usually it's right in this area. If it's bright green, it will say paper successfully submitted, and it will give you a receipt. So you should, and it should also email you a receipt that shows you that you submitted this paper at this time, and it actually assigns it this little number, which you don't really need for anything. If it shows up red, however, it means there was a problem. The paper was not submitted, and it usually tells you what the problem was. 9 times out of 10, it's because students did not save their papers in the right file format, which I talked about before, and so the system can't read it, so it won't take it. Okay, but what I want to show you, after you submit a paper, when you want to go back and get your feedback, I'm going to choose a student's paper from last semester. Okay, by the way that you go back and get your feedback is you go back and you select your title. So you return to the week 3 Dropbox where you uploaded your draft, and once I release the feedback, you select the title, so it's in blue, and it should open your paper. I'll wait a minute, make sure that it makes that transition. We'll give it a second. Or actually, let me try this again. Okay, do you see a paper that's from a particular student entitled 16 Wishes?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so what I'm going to show you is how to retrieve your feedback. When you, you'll see this menu here on the right-hand side of the screen. Part of it will be in blue, part of it will be in red. I have more options because I'm the instructor, and unfortunately, I do not have, as the instructor, I don't have access to the student view, the student screen. So I know you have some of this, I just don't know how much of it. However, if the paper shows up and there's nothing on it, but I've told you that the feedback's available, select whatever is over here in blue and it should appear. Okay, so I have the option of actually typing comments. So here's the first comment, L-level drafts, and I'm going to talk about, that'll be the last thing I talk about in a second. And then I have, you don't have this capability, but I do. I have all these little marks that I can actually drag. It's kind of a shorthand where I can just drag comments over. And the great thing about most of them is that they are, if you click on them, they actually explain what the problem is. And I do more than just mark problems. I'll definitely write you comments about what's working well as in addition. But if I'm identifying problem areas, this is what I use. All right, these little text boxes, and when you click on it, then there'll be a comment, or if it's something that's actually created by the system itself, it actually gives you some explanation from one of the grammar handbooks. And so it'll tell you the inappropriate diction, then it goes through and it explains what that means and so forth. Comma splice, it'll go through and explain, give you the rules for comma splices and tell you sort of how to fix it and so forth. So I give you some typed feedback, but more importantly, I will give you up to 3 minutes of recorded feedback. And the way that you find this, there should be, on my screen it looks like this, and it's got an arrow and I record comments. Just look for an arrow that looks like this in blue. And when you select that, you can hear my feedback. Your birthday sounds amazing. It really does. And you describe it very vividly, everything from the, sights, smells. Okay, so what I do is, normally I begin with what's working, and then I get into the main issues and what, if there are any, and what you need to fix. Now, the better the draft, the more that I can just help you put commas in the right place. If you give me something that you've kind of tossed off really quickly and you know that it's not very good and it's underdeveloped, then that's what I'm going to have to devote my 3 minutes to talking with you about. And there's not much we can do about the grammar and the mechanics and just that fine tuning, which is really, very left to brain, and it's the last stage of the writing process, basically. So again, the better the draft, the better really my feedback can just be helping you with small things. Any questions about this now? How to find feedback, how to access it, what it means, and so forth? Because the last thing I'm going to tell you about is this. Everybody good? Okay. All right, so the last thing that I want to explain, this was on your syllabus, and at the time that I went over the syllabus in the course orientation video, I mentioned that I would come back to this later when it was appropriate. Well, now it's appropriate. With drafts, most students want to know, it's very logical to want to know, if you were to grade this paper on this date, what would I make? And instead of sort of guessing, giving a letter grade or a numerical grade to it, what I do is I use these letter designations to indicate whether your particular draft is an early stage draft, a mid-stage draft, and by stage I mean in this writing process, or a late stage draft. So and that's usually my very first comment in those little blue boxes at the top there. Now, if I indicate that it's an early stage draft, that means you've got something down, but you're really in the very beginning stages or early stages of the writing process. And so there's a lot more work that usually needs to take place. Often the problem has to do with development. The paper's underdeveloped, there are not enough ideas, you haven't included enough specifics, or you've gotten way off track, or there's just some real deficiency in the paper. And sometimes it's just the excess. If you tend to make a lot of technical errors, just at some point, if there's so many of those that it really impacts the readability of the paper, then that's what I'm trying to indicate as well. The draft would receive a D or an F if I graded it as is, but the good news is, right, I give you information about how to improve it before I actually do assign a final grade. M indicates that it's a middle stage draft, and that means in the process you've got it's pretty solid. Middle stage equates to a C-level paper, which is basically, we tend to think of it as being average, but it means it's solid. You've got a good framework, you've got some good ideas, there is some organization, but it still needs some division, or again, there's an excessive number of technical issues. And then finally, an L stage draft indicates that the paper is currently the draft that you submitted is really in pretty good shape, that it just needs a little bit of polishing, a little bit of proofing, but if I were to grade it, assigning a grade on that day that I'm reading through your draft, it would receive a B or an A. But I still tell you how to improve it, right? Every once in a while, somebody will turn in something that I've got no comment, it's other than this is really good and here's why it's so good. That doesn't necessarily happen because most of us are not at that stage in our writing experience, right? Now, more often than not, I'll sometimes give you an E/M or an M/L, and that indicates this is a D plus C minus, or a C minus, a C plus B minus. It's somewhere between there. It's kind of an encouragement grade. You're kind of in the middle there between those two thresholds, and again, I give you information about how to improve it. Okay, now we're going to use this process throughout the semester for every major writing assignment. I didn't do it with the blogs because the blogs are 50 points and they're just more of an introductory, getting started, give me a writing sample, introduce yourself to the class in some way, type of an assignment. But now after this is where we really get into helping you improve, and with every assignment that you have throughout the semester, it builds on previous assignments and becomes more complicated. There will be more that's asked of you until finally we end up with a research paper at the end of the semester in which you're showing everything that you've learned to this point, and that includes incorporating other people's ideas with your own. That paper is a little bit lengthier. It's still not terribly long, but that's how we'll end the semester. All right, do you have any other questions for me about this or anything else you're doing right now that I could answer for you at this point? All right, if not, I hope you have a really good afternoon. And again, as we get into more technical work, especially as we start incorporating research into your writing, we will have another two more live sessions. But they'll be spaced, in there'll be another one in a couple of weeks, and then another one in July. So have a good afternoon.